Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on randirhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or progressivevoices.com now.
All right, 25 after, please welcome Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter David Cay Johnston, friend of the Randi Rhodes Show, back to the Randi Rhodes Show. Hello.
Hello, Randi. How are you?
You're looking good. I see you on the TV all the time. They never let you talk, but you got plenty of time here.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Plenty of time. So he's written this book called The Making of Donald Trump, which is everything Donald Trump does not want you to know about Donald Trump. So, David, this book is insane. It starts with his dad and his grandfather. Would you care to begin at the beginning, or is there something other than that you'd like to comment upon? For instance, your new piece today about we're finally richer, we're finally as rich as we were 15 years ago.
Well, that's, there are some people who blame me for making inequality a household issue in this country from my work at the New York Times. But
yeah, thank God for
there
you.
There is new data from 2014 and 2015 that shows that finally, we are out of the economic doldrums. The number of people reporting an income of less than $25,000 fell in 2014 by 1,100,000, which is terrific news. It's still more than a third of all Americans. But no, I'd like to talk to you about Trump and the issue that the networks won't touch, the major newspapers aren't touching, and the public really needs to know about. And that is, out of all the various con artists, swindlers, American mobsters, Russian mobsters, foreign agents that Donald Trump is entangled with, the single most important is a guy named Joe Wexelbaum, a convicted felon and a mob associate who provided Donald Trump with his helicopters.
Yes, tell us about the drug dealer.
Well, he's not a dealer. He's above a dealer. He was a trafficker, and a major trafficker, up to 1,500 pounds at a time of cocaine or marijuana, moved from Colombia to Miami to Cincinnati. Now, a very strange thing happened here. As the owner of casinos, Donald Trump needed helicopters. There were lots of helicopter companies. Trump chose this guy's company. When it went bust, he stayed with them. When they reorganized the second time, he stayed with them. When he was told that Wexelbaum had been indicted as a major drug trafficker, he stayed with him. Then this guy agreed to plead guilty. His case, he asked to be transferred either to Miami or New York City, and instead it mysteriously went to Newark, New Jersey, and was brought before federal judge Marianne Trump Berry.
Oh, isn't that a small world? Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Now, she recused herself from the case after 3 weeks. But imagine for a moment, Randi, you're the chief judge, and Marianne Trump Berry comes to you and says, listen, I can't handle this case because my husband, who's a lawyer for Trump's casinos, flies in these helicopters regularly, and I fly in them all the time. So now you're thinking, I have a federal judge flying around in helicopters owned by a major drug trafficker. He's a guy who's confessed to this.
Right.
Trump writes a letter pleading for mercy for this guy, saying he's a stand-up citizen, he's a diligent, good guy. When he's asked about this by New Jersey casino regulators, because in New Jersey a casino owner is required by law to prove by clear and convincing evidence that he's financially stable and that he does not associate with criminals and that he's personally honest.
Right.
It's a duty imposed on you. He denies writing the letter. So they get the letter, they show it to him, and he says, well, that's my signature, and they don't apparently ask any other questions. The report they issued indicated nothing further was asked. Not, why did you write this letter? Why would you put your casino license at risk for this drug trafficker? Well, the mules, the people who drove the drugs from Miami to Cincinnati, they got 20 years. This guy, after Trump wrote the letter and the case was mysteriously moved, he served 18 months, not 20 years, 18 months. He told his parole officer that he was eligible for parole because as soon as he left, he had a job with Donald Trump.
Right.
He also said he had no money to pay the fines that were imposed on him, and then he moved into a multi-million-dollar apartment his girlfriend had just acquired in Trump Tower.
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry. This should be Trump should be hammered about this as much as about his income taxes, about his claims that he's given tens of millions to charity there's no evidence of. And in my book, The Making of Donald Trump, one of the things I do is it's all public record. There's 44 pages of notes in the back so people can look up where I got stuff from.
Yep.
And, of course, I've known him, as you know, for 28 years.
Yeah.
But he should be hammered about this. What in the world would cause you to risk your casino license for a drug trafficker? And the only thing I can tell you for sure is this. His conduct shows that Trump needed this drug trafficker to be his friend and not his enemy, and he was so desperately in need of it that he was willing to risk his casino license to make sure this guy knew he was his friend.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know why, of all the people, why Schulbaum is, you know, for you the most heinous, because Paul Castellano and and Salerno and all these mafia dudes that Donald Trump was mobbed up with. How come, you know, you don't think that that's something that...
Well, I think they're very important. And in the case of Salerno and the New York Mafia, you know, major builders back in the 70s and 80s had to deal with the mob, but here's how Donald was different from everybody else. The Resnick family, the Lafrac family, other big developers, they went to the FBI and said, would you please rid us of these monsters?
Right.
Trump ran to them and embraced them.
Yeah.
And by the way, Trump Tower is a concrete building. Why? Well, if he built a traditional steel girder building, he would have dealt with honest unions. But he instead dealt with unions that were under the thumb of the mob because he built a concrete building, 58-story concrete structure. And he cheated workers out of their money. He cheated vendors, just as he's done throughout his career. Right now, the Doral, his country club down in Florida, where the Cadillac no longer sponsors his golf tournament, so the PGA moved it to Mexico.
Oh God!
In a pretty clear message to Trump. In that case, a Benjamin Moore paint dealer was provided all the paint. Trump refused to pay the last $34,000 that was owed.
Right.
Donald does this all the time. Trump says, "Oh, well, I'm just not going to pay you." Well, this guy decided to go to court. He spent over $300,000 in legal fees, and a judge, after hearing Trump's witness, his manager of his club, testify that Mr. Trump feels he has paid enough, issued an order allowing the paint dealer to foreclose on the Doral. Now, it hasn't been foreclosed on yet,
right?
But the operative point here is that Trump, in this case, clearly shows, you know, his attitude. I'm just going to pay you what I feel like, and if you don't like it, sue me. And most people can't afford to do that. This guy proceeded to sue, and he won. There are over 4,000 lawsuits like this against Donald Trump.
And he settles a whole bunch of them. Like, for instance, you know, the big story that finally broke out about Donald Trump and the little C, not the classified or confidential C that he's obsessed with Hillary, but the C that stood for colored, you know, in the
rental of his units, yeah,
in the rental of his units in Queens, where I grew up. You know, Trump always says, "Oh, well, they didn't make me pay anything, so I guess I didn't do anything wrong."
Right.
But they did. They made him take out ads in New York newspapers saying that he was an equal opportunity renter and he had to pay for them out of his own pocket. And then because they didn't make him pay big bucks, he did it again 3 years later.
That's right. As soon as the court supervision that you were to stop discriminating ended, they immediately went back to discriminating again. And by the way, his father did this in the 50s and was gone after by the government back then.
Yes, for bilking GI-funded housing.
Right.
Okay.
Well, also for housing discrimination. But yes, his father, who was reputedly the first person in line to get Federal Housing Administration loans, subsidized loans from the government for
GI housing.
Yeah. He was a profiteer, and when Eisenhower was told what he had done, he threw a fit in the Oval Office, and the proof of that is that 100 federal investigators, this is in the 50s, were put on the case. Not just Fred Trump, though he was the star person in the investigation.
Right.
And when he was hauled before the Senate Banking and Currency Committee, he said, "I'm not a profiteer. This is all a misunderstanding. Yes, there's $4 million there, more than the government rules provided for, but the money is sitting in the bank account. I didn't take it out, so I'm not a profiteer."
Right.
Man, that's pretty creative finance.
Yeah, I mean, this is the family tree, and the apple does not fall far from the tree, especially
Right.
this tree, which did not branch.
Yep.
I mean, Grandpa ran a whorehouse.
Right. Three of them.
Yeah, 3 whorehouses. I don't know if you know this, but Trump's granddaddy ran whorehouses.
Yep.
Okay.
And
then,
not many people know that. And he was also a draft dodger. He came to America so he wouldn't have to serve in the military in his home country of Germany. He left when he was 16 years old in the middle of the night and fled. And when he tried to go back later, after he'd gotten rich as the operator of whorehouses, the Germans said, "Hey, you dodged the draft. Get out of our country." And so he came back to America.
So isn't this is Donald Trump's immigration thing? They're going to make countries take back the undesirables. So his grandpa would have been taken back by Germany.
Well, and you'll remember now, I think it's been more than a month now that Trump said that he would show that his wife, Melania, was only in this country legally working as a model.
Right.
Well, I haven't seen anything from him yet. And
well, I sent sent investigators to New York, and you wouldn't believe what they're finding.
And if Randi, if in fact she actually was legally in this country, she would be just about the only foreign model that ever did so.
That's right, and he owned the Trump Model Management Agency.
Still does. Still does.
And that story won't make it on the TV either. And you know what the problem is, David? I mean, as somebody that does broadcasting this way for years and years, if I have always said if it's not on the TV, it didn't happen. And nobody covers any of these stories. And yet tons of people, well, not tons, very, very, small slivers of our society actually work really, really hard, like you, like Wayne Barrett, like David Farenthold, like this Newsweek reporter, Icar today,
Kurt Eichenwald, he used to sit next to me at the New York Times. Yes.
Amazing reporting, and it takes years. I wrote a book. Who's your publisher? I need the inside information.
Well, Melville House Press, but it's interesting that the models haven't made TV because, after all,
they're beautiful.
It has great visual images for television.
Yeah.
And the models who've spoken up have said, "Hey, we were stuck 5 of us in a basement bedroom, charged $1,100 a month each for the bedroom." Some of them said they never made a penny,
right?
And they were. I know you'll be shocked to hear this, but they were preyed on by various men connected with the operation.
Shocking.
Just absolutely shocking. There's gambling going on here.
So Grandpa may have run whorehouses, but Donald Trump participated in basic white slavery, because I read that story about those models. They are beautiful. There's no question. They all ended up being successful and getting their work permits. But when Donald Trump had his, just like the Polish workers,
right.
He brings people into this country who are illegal. He hires them. He makes them work with, the least productive tools, like the Polish workers work with sledgehammers.
And they're demolishing a high-rise, a 12-story building in Midtown Manhattan. They have no hard hats, no goggles, no gloves. They're working with asbestos. They have no face masks. But this is the pattern of Donald Trump's businesses.
And he pays them in vodka. And then says to them, they go, well, we came here to get paid for money. We want money. We have to feed our family. And he goes, well, you're illegal. Go complain to somebody who's going to give a damn. Nobody's going to listen to you. And he does the same thing with these girls who he keeps in squalid living conditions, who can't tell anybody about anything that they're going through because they're illegal too. I mean, the pattern and practice has, like I said, the family tree did not branch. Women are playthings. They are to be exploited. Workers are illegal. They don't need to get paid. Who are you going to complain to? You need a casino license. It usually takes a year. He doesn't report. Donald Trump does not report to the Casino Licensing Commission in New Jersey that he had 2 grand jury investigations.
Actually, he had 4 altogether.
Oh,
there were
Jesus.
4.
Tell me about that.
And 2 of them he disclosed. The other 2 he only disclosed when he found out that the state had learned about him. Donald Trump, his whole life, he has broken the law, ignored the law, violated the law. He threatens and bullies people. It's one of the reasons you're not seeing tough coverage of him. He called me in April and said if I didn't write it the way he likes, he'd sue me. And we've, of course, known each other for a long time. He should know better than that with me. I don't intimidate. But and my peers, with a few exceptions, and you mentioned the key people, are utterly failing to do their job of revealing who Trump really is. And the person you're seeing on TV has nothing to do with what the public record shows about Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's breathtaking.
It's very frustrating.
It is frustrating. I feel your frustration.
And if people want to vote for him, and they know this, that's one thing. But it's another if you don't know that. If you think, there are all sorts of workers, white, blue-collar workers, who think he's their savior. Well, they don't realize that he says wages in America are too high.
I know.
We have to lower wages.
You know what else
when I tell that to union workers I've been to, I've literally had union people say, that's a lie. You just made that up. And I go, no, go look at the tape. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. And I've played it before where he said wages are too high. We live in a global economy and you're just going to have to, he never said lower your expectations, but this is what he was telling workers. You have to lower your expectations. You want to compete in a global economy. You can't ask for $12 an hour. You can't ask for $15 an hour. Do you know? It's amazing. And then you combine what you've produced here in this book, which probably took you, I'm guessing, a couple years to write. And get vetted. And
actually, to tell you the truth, because I've written so much about Donald, I wrote that book in 27 days of sheer
my
hell.
God.
So I wanted to do a book in the summer of last year when I was the only national journalist on the day he announced who said he might win the nomination this time because he's run before.
Yeah.
And nobody thought he would get it. And by the time it was pretty clear he'd get it, for most publishers, it's too late. Melville House came to me and said, can you do the book in 3 weeks? And I said, absolutely not. But if you give me 4, I'll finish. And I wish I'd had one more week, 5. I would have gotten a lot more in.
Oh, my God.
But there's plenty of stuff in that book about all of these things. And by the way, remember the Wexelbaum? He pled for mercy for the cocaine dealer?
Right.
I mean, not dealer, cocaine trafficker. He cut off health care for a sickly child, his own blood, his grandnephew, in order to have more money. Now, when he was asked about this, he said, well, what else could I do? Well, don't you think it looks cold-hearted? Well, what else could I do? And this is a man who would put the life of a sickly infant, his grandnephew did put the life of a sickly infant, in jeopardy so he could have more money.
Listen, Donald Trump's whole demeanor is about revenge. His whole demeanor is vindictive. Everything that Donald Trump, this is why he can't let go of old fights. He can't let go of somebody, slight. I just watched.
But how to explain, Randy, all these ministers like Jerry Falwell Jr. and Jeffress, who are going around saying he's a fine Christian man.
How about Mike Pence?
When his philosophy is revenge, which is the exact opposite of the message of Jesus Christ. Yeah,
it's not exactly Sermon on the Mount, is it? No. But no. I just watched him go to Flint. I don't know if you caught it or not. I don't know where you are, but I was sitting here doing show prep, and the TV's on. And I have the closed captioning on because you can't have the sound. Anyway, so I see him in Flint. He stopped by a tradition, a historically black church, and the pastor had to pull him off of the stage because she invited him to come to hear the problems of Flint and the water and the poisoning and the lead. And
he just wanted to tell him what he thought.
Yeah, he wanted to give a political speech and trash Hillary, and so she got up on the stage and she said to him, "Excuse me, Mr. Trump, but we thank you for coming, but we did not invite you here to give a political speech. We invited you here so that you could listen to our problems." And then he was fumfering. He had nothing to. He didn't know what to do, which way to go. He started trashing Hillary a little bit more. She looked at him and is like, could you cut the crap? And then all of a sudden he goes, the people that poisoned your water, they really didn't know. They didn't know.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was painful. It was a cluster, It was just so bad just now.
I mean, in that case, that's particularly outrageous because they, in fact, were warned and...
Well, don't you remember? I think I called you. I don't know if it was you or one of my other, experts. I have very few guests, as you know, and the ones that I have are very important to me. And so I think it was you that explained the emergency manager stuff that was going on.
Right, the emergency manager point. What we had is Governor Snyder got these dictatorial powers. He replaced democratically elected governments. They had water from something called the Port Huron Tunnel Project that feeds Detroit, so they had high-quality water from far out in the middle of Lake Huron, and they replaced it with the water from the local river, which is full of all sorts of runoff from agriculture and other chemical matters. And this was a totally predictable disaster. It was supposed to save money, didn't save any money, and it's indicative of why we shouldn't be granting governors dictatorial powers. And by the way, if you listen to Trump, he talks about the job of the presidency as he will be a dictator. And here's the really troubling thing he's done recently. My column in the Daily Beast last week was about this. Donald Trump says that he'll have new generals. Well, one of the first things dictators do before they seize power and end republics is they remove those military commanders who are loyal to the country, and they replace them with those who will be loyal to a specific individual. And that should be very disturbing to people. That it's his own words.
Oh, I know. Listen, it's like it's like a Saddam Hussein meeting. You remember the one from '87?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like Kim Jong Un. He
haul
kills
people out in the hallway and shoot them.
Yeah.
And
but you know what
Donald
kills me?
Trump says,
yeah, go ahead.
Donald Trump says, Randy, that his overriding business objective is total loyalty to him. He even says never trust your top employees because they're always trying to do you in. So he breeds paranoia among his people. And I watched this when I was covering his business closely in Atlantic City years ago. But his management style is just awful, but it's entirely based on you do whatever I say or you're out and I won't go out of my way to make your life miserable. And in the making of Donald Trump, I quote him about this. He's written about it in one of his books. He's given speeches about it. This is very scary stuff. We have a professional first-rate officer corps, and we don't promote those people on the basis of political loyalty to anybody but the United States of America, not to someone like Donald Trump.
No, I know it frightens me too because he is an autocrat. He's a demagogue. And I ask people to please look up the word demagogue because it gets thrown around. People don't get the real meaning of it. But if you look at it, is a textbook Merriam-Webster description of what Donald Trump is all about, and it's a frightening thing. And people say, "Oh, well, I thought you were for Bernie, and how do you vote for Hillary?" And I go, because one is a fascist and one is not. I mean,
well, I think actually calling Donald Trump a fascist is sort of unfair to fascists because fascists at least have a political philosophy. Donald Trump has no political philosophy. He's been, for abortion, against abortion.
You're right.
In favor of universal health care. Now he's not in favor of it. He's been all over the map on everything. Donald Trump's entire philosophy is that he is superior to the rest of us. One of his sons talked about this. He's genetically superior, and his children are genetically superior because of the women he bred with. And therefore, of course, he should be president of the United States. This is beyond question.
Yeah, he's a very interesting head case, and he is vindictive, and that's the scary part. I mean, we've probably had I know we've had presidents who suffered from illnesses, mental and otherwise, but they managed to create a New Deal and a Marshall Plan and like a whole bunch of stuff. But here you have a man whose entire motivation for getting up every single day is to get revenge on anybody who has slighted him or anybody that won't play his game. Or anybody he can, wring a couple of shekels out of. I mean, you know what? Before we do this, before we end this, talk to me about Felix Sater, the Russian stock fraudster, because I want to get into the global aspect of why Trump cannot be president.
Well, Trump has very troubling connections, as Newsweek today points out.
Unreal.
In the article by Kurt Eichenwald. But in the book, I tell a lot about Felix Sater, who is the son of the reputed Russian mob boss in New York City. He is a convicted violent felon who took the broken stem of a margarita glass in a bar and slammed it so deeply into a guy's face it took 110 stitches, and he'll never be okay. He served time for this. Later, he ran a stock fraud on behalf of 4 of the 5 New York City mafia families.
Right.
He had an office in not just Trump Tower, not just the Trump organization, but the suite where Donald's office is. Now, Trump has said, I hardly know the man. I couldn't recognize him if he was in the same room. I have video photographs and interviews with them traveling in 2 cities in Colorado, in Phoenix, in Fort Lauderdale, in New York City. His children were with him in Moscow. And they were very close, but it's now inconvenient for Trump to do that. Sater is currently the defendant in a $250 million tax fraud. Trump made that alleged tax fraud, possible through a letter that he signed authorizing part of the deal, and he may well become eventually a defendant in the case. Sater, of course, says he did nothing wrong, but this alleged tax fraud ran through the corrupt Icelandic banks and goes back to the oligarchs in Russia.
Who he
Trump
loves.
has gotten a lot of money from the oligarchs in Russia. If you're an oligarch in Russia, you have to be a friend of Vladimir Putin. If you're not, he kills you. He's killed people with poison. He's had them shot. He's had them imprisoned. So notice Donald Trump constantly, at every opportunity, praises Vladimir Putin. What a great leader he is. Mm-hmm. How is that different than saying Kim Il-jung is a great leader?
No, it's not.
Or Adolf Hitler. I mean, it's astonishing.
Well, he actually says, Saddam Hussein was great because he killed terrorists. I mean, this man loves autocrats. He loves dictators.
That's exactly right.
But more than anything, he loves an oligarch, and that is what Putin is. And it's just, and he's got business in Ukraine too. And it's just so strange, when you start to see what did make the TV and what didn't. The idea that we had Paul Manafort, and that should have opened up a conversation about, does Donald Trump have business dealings in Russia? Does Donald Trump have business dealings in Ukraine? Well, clearly your desk mate at the New York Times says, yeah, he does. He absolutely does. And, the only way that you get to be a billionaire in Russia is if Vladimir Putin, gives you the bid, or gives you the business, or gives you, whatever it is. So, I mean, this man... Look, presidents don't do legislation. Okay, that's what Congress does.
That's right.
They don't declare something constitutional or unconstitutional. That's what the Supreme Court does. Presidents do foreign policy, and Donald Trump is absolutely so conflicted that there is no way that he could make any decision with America first. It would be Trump first, Trump organization first, Trump children first, Trump business first, and he would never, ever, ever sacrifice any. I mean, remember when he was asked what sacrifices he did?
I mean, let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Right, okay.
Assume that. The fact is, he is closely linked with people who are inimical to the interests of the United States.
Right.
And he particularly look at his relationships in India and how volatile the situation is between two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And that group of Hindu nationalists who want to go to war with the Muslims, they have been out praising Donald Trump and praying that he will be elected president, because they believe he will
take care of Pakistan,
a war that will advance their objective. He's been doing business with a person that the U.S. government intelligence agencies say was a major money launderer for the Iranian government during the period of the sanctions. There's no limit to Donald on who you do business with, so long as you bring him money. If you provide him with money, in all of these deals, people think he's a big businessman. He never has a penny of his own money invested.
Isn't that
he borrows 100% plus, or he gets fees up front, and then he takes profits and he sucks money out of it. And in these foreign dealings, he is dealing with corrupt government officials where there is no need to do so. There are honest ones around. He's dealing with the worst elements because that's what he does. He surrounds himself with criminals, and he has his whole life. It's his modus operandi.
Well, he learned everything from Roy Cohn, who was eventually disbarred because he was a mob lawyer. And that's how Donald Trump probably got his entree, somewhere around Studio 54, where Roy and Donald were dancing together with the little Coke spoon around their neck, having a really good time. And Roy
let me be clear, Donald doesn't do drugs.
Right.
No, I don't know. I put a lot of time into that. Donald does not do drugs, doesn't drink. There's some family history there.
I know he doesn't drink because of his
brother. But he certainly hung out with people who were doing drugs all over the place, and the major cocaine trafficker that he went to bat for.
It's very interesting, and everybody says he doesn't do drugs, and yet look at everybody that he surrounds himself with. They're all a bunch of degenerate drug traffickers, drug dealers, drug snorters, drug users. The places he loved to hang out were drug dens. I mean, it's just so amazing. So in one way, maybe you're right. He doesn't use drugs. You say you know him. I'll defer to you because I know you do for 27 years. However, maybe he stays sober to take advantage of the criminal element. I don't know, but he does.
No, I think that's the right way to understand that he will associate with people like this. And look, it's not mere association is not a problem. I mean, I've had lunch and drinks and whatnot. I once had the mob's #2 hitman on the West Coast in my house while I made him coffee, and he told me about people he'd killed. But we're not doing business with each other. I'm interviewing him for the newspaper. Trump is doing money-making deals with these people.
Yeah.
And to think that doesn't compromise him. And by the way, he's, through one of his companies, he's in debt to the Communist Chinese Bank of China, the state-owned bank in Beijing. I mean, can you imagine if what would happen if it turned out Hillary Clinton had a credit card from a Communist Chinese bank?
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Look at all the money he's gotten from oligarchs that we can establish from the public record. Can you imagine if Barack Obama had gotten $10 from a Russian oligarch, what would be made out of that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing thing. So do you think this is why he won't release his tax returns?
Oh, sure. Well, he's not going to release his tax returns for two big reasons. Number one, he in all likelihood has not paid any federal income taxes since 1978.
All right. Well,
we know he hasn't paid in certain years, and as you know, I'm an expert on taxes enough that I am actually drafting an entirely new federal tax code that will be out in a year or two.
All right.
Secondly, in the Daily Beast a couple of months ago, I showed incredibly strong evidence that Donald committed tax fraud in his 1984 income tax return because there was a trial at which it was discussed. We know Donald was involved in sales tax fraud. We know that he's been involved in what isn't fraud because it's not illegal, but ridiculous practices about valuing his properties in property tax cases. He has a golf course he says is worth more than $250 million that he tells the tax authorities it's worth 10.
Right.
He has another one he says is worth more than 50. He says it's actually worth 1.3. An entire golf course, $1.3 million.
Yeah.
And we know he did the sales tax fraud. There's very clear public record of that. So Trump will not give us his tax returns for those two reasons. He probably hasn't paid taxes, number one. Number two, the tax fraud that it would show. More importantly, on top of all of that, it would show that he's not making charitable gifts, even though he says he's given away tens of millions of dollars. David Farenthold's been calling, 300 and some charities now who haven't gotten any money. I did the same thing back in 1990. I called about 60 charities. None of them had ever gotten a dime from him. They'd tried, many of them. There's not a charitable bone in his body. And, of course, most of the money in the Trump Foundation has come not from him but from vendors. It's a kind of legal kickback from the guy who makes his neckties in China and the World Wrestling Enterprise. You know, and
NBC with The Apprentice.
And NBC with The Apprentice.
Right.
That's right. They give the money and then he gets the credit for it. And so you have to understand that Donald Trump is a con artist. Once you grasp that he's a con man, he'll tell you whatever he thinks will get you to do what he wants.
Yeah, and every time I try to explain to one of these alt-right supporters, these people who, you know what they'll tell you? They'll actually say, I don't care. He hates the same people I hate. You know, and so once he said he was.
Well, hate is not a basis for running a government.
I understand he's completely, but the media is what really peeves me the most. It pisses me off, quite frankly, because these are issues that are out there that really great reporters, Pulitzer Prize winning reporters like you and others, you know, Eichenhold and Wayne Barrett and other people who are trying to get this story out before America makes the worst decision of its entire, history. They're not allowed to talk about any of this. I don't know what the deal is. I think maybe the media has a vested interest in keeping this nice and tight and close, and they want to see what happens if it's close and Donald Trump says it was rigged. I think they want to see that story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
listen,
thank you, Randy, very much.
Okay, The Making of Donald Trump is David Cay Johnston's amazing book. It's got everything in there that we just discussed and more. Thanks.
Everything Donald doesn't want you to know.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Put in a good word for me at Melville House.
I will do. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, honey.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah, he's amazing. And, I'm very picky about guests. Can't just be anybody. Not only do you have to, be able to explain very difficult things simply and, so that I can understand them, but you also have to have a track record of telling the truth, of writing things that earn you Pulitzer Prizes, writing things that have been fact-checked, writing things that are real, writing things that pass muster, writing things that are accepted by fact-checkers everywhere as being factual. Donald Trump is not a serious person. And so when they talk like this moral equivalency between Hillary Clinton and her server in the House and Donald Trump, the most corrupt man on the planet, it's bizarre.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Hi, we're back, and everything is possible again. Isn't it beautiful? Well, if you want to keep it this way, buy a stinking podcast. Oh, yes, you have to buy a stinking podcast. And you get that at RandiRhodes.com, where we're open all day, all night long. RandiRhodes.com. Get your stinking podcast.